Good morning, everybody. This Sunday, it won't be as cozy out. Last Sunday, it was, thundering. It was cloudy. It was kind of dark in this room. So hopefully, I don't lull you to sleep this time, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and let's say a prayer. Dear Father up in heaven, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for all of the many rich blessings that you give us. But especially right now, we thank you so much for your word. We thank you for the Bible. We thank you for Jesus Christ. Father, we pray that you help us during this time as we study your word. Please help us to glean from it. Please help us to learn and help us to apply it to our life. We love you, and it's in Jesus Christ's name we pray to you. Amen. So back in my college days, we would take these short courses. There was one short course on church history, so 5 days that just all day in class and, all night studying for exams and doing the homework. It was super fast-paced. I felt pretty prepared. I did a lot of the work. I felt like I was doing good. I had some reading I think it was about 4 or 5 chapters of just one book, so not even a ton. Now, it did end up being about 100, 150 pages, somewhere in that area. They were big chapters, but all in all, I got that done. I was allowed to, if I wanted to, listen to an audio version of it. I did that. So I put it on in the background. While I was kind of working on some other stuff, I was able to kind of focus in on that, kind of focus in on something else. But, I'll be honest, maybe didn't focus too much on the audio reading, and that came back to bite me. So I kind of let that go while I'm working on some other stuff. The final exam comes around, and there wasn't really a study guide. It was just kind of comprehensive. And I was ready. I was prepared. It was a 4-page exam. First 3, doing good. I'm like, I'm going to get a 95 easy on this, if not maybe even better. Last page, that was worth 25%. It was an essay on the reading. And like I said, I did not pay near as much attention as I maybe would have claimed I did, and it showed. So, yes, I was able to check off, I got my reading done. But he made sure I actually got my reading done, right? Well, in the end, did I pass the exam? Sure. Did I get a fine grade on the class? Sure. But what was the very last thing in that class? The very last thing that I remember was completely destroying that 25% essay. Just completely destroying it to the point that I went from like, oh, I'm going to do good to, I passed that exam, but it was close. It came close. Partially prepared. And because of that partial preparation, and I felt like almost completely prepared, but because of that partial preparation, I didn't realize how important that little last piece was, that last piece to the puzzle. It kind of ruined the day. It kind of ruined the class. Today, we're going to look at this concept of partial preparation. And we're going to be looking at it with the parable of the 10 virgins from Matthew chapter 25, verses 1 through 13. Now, I'm going to encourage you, open that up. Typically, I do have the texts up on the screen. We won't today, and you'll see why. There's actually a reason behind it. So I would encourage you to do that, but if you can't, say you're juggling kids, babe, I got you, I'll still read it through. In fact, we're going to read this text through twice. But there is something scary and something really sad about partial preparation. Leading up to this text, we see a few incidences that Jesus is going to talk about preparation. First, he talks about the dangers of no preparation. That's a sad situation in Matthew 24, 36 through 44. to not be prepared at all for Jesus to come back. But another sad situation is delayed preparation. Matthew 24, 45 through 51. He's going to talk about how someone had planned to be prepared, but just never did. That's a little bit more sad than just not being prepared at all. You didn't even try. Before this one, you planned to try, but you didn't. But of course, it is far more sad to be partially prepared, to be there. This text isn't talking about someone who has never accepted Jesus Christ at all, who has never been baptized for the forgiveness of their sins. That's not what this text is talking about. This text is talking about someone who has done a lot to prepare themselves for the coming of Jesus Christ, but they decided intentionally to throw something important aside. Maybe it is your prayer life. You have intentionally decided, you know what? And maybe you don't think it's intentional, but you've just kind of just thrown that aside. You don't really care to talk to your Father. Maybe you don't really care to hear what he has to say to you through his word. And you just don't study the Bible. Maybe you just don't care to serve. This is someone, and I'm not saying you, but what this is someone who has done a lot to prepare, but they've just thrown aside one key aspect, and they just don't really care about that aspect. That's what we're talking about, and how sad to miss your opportunity at the kingdom of heaven because you couldn't care less about a very important aspect of your Christianity, even though you've done so much for it. That's what this parable is talking about. And just looking at some cultural stuff before we get into the actual premise of this lesson. Looking at some cultural things. Let's understand 3 things culturally about this parable. So we've got the parable of the 10 virgins, these 10 women who are about to get married. First thing we need to understand, no, it would not have been common for one man to set up a wedding with 10 women. That's not what's being said here. There are 10 women who are getting ready to go to their wedding with one man. That wouldn't normally happen, okay? Jesus isn't condoning this. The point is very personal. There are several of us waiting for the coming of Jesus Christ, right? They would have known that in the culture, so don't be like, whoa, that's kind of odd. The second thing that wouldn't have been normal is, even though the bride would have to wait for the groom to come and pick her up, that's kind of like the groom stands up here and waits for his bride to come down the aisle. They would have waited for their groom to come pick them up. In this story, they're waiting hours and they fall asleep. Well, while you needed to kind of be prepared for that, that wouldn't typically happen. That wasn't normal for the bride to just be like, well, I'm going to fall asleep because I don't know when this guy's going to show up. Again, this is personal to our story with Jesus Christ, how we are waiting for him, and we don't know how long it's going to take. There's going to be times of rest. There's going to be times of work. But also, the big kicker in this is it would have been normal. It would have been common for women to hold their lantern or hold their torch. Bride, if you were a bride once, if you're going to be a bride, think of that bouquet. You had that bouquet. That is normal. That is traditional. That is a big thing that you would prepare. So was this torch or this lantern. That's what it was like to her. And to not have that prepared was a big deal. So now, here's what we're going to do. Let's break down this parable from 2 perspectives. The first perspective is from the foolish. And what we're going to do is, I want you all to see this outline, this 5-part outline. First from the perspective of the foolish, then from the perspective of the prudent. That's why we won't necessarily have the text up there, because I want you to see the outline and see how they're very similar. But there's just one simple change that can change the trajectory of how they feel about the coming of their groom. So let's look at the perspective of the foolish or the partially prepared. First thing we see is that they took no oil with them in verses 1 through 3. Let's go ahead and look at that. Then the kingdom of heaven will be comparable to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. Again, imagine you as a bride. You have the finances prepared. You have the intention prepared. You have everything prepared to have your bouquet on your wedding day. You've got everything set up, ready to go. You are as nervous as can be, as jolly as can be. You know, you're excited, you're nervous, all of that. But then you just decide the bouquet can wait. Now it's the wedding day. You're at the venue, but the bouquet can wait. I'll get it later. The point that's trying to be made here is that's foolish, right? You wouldn't do that. And yet, so many people are going to come to Christ and be like, I'll prepare everything. I will be baptized. I will show up to services. I will read my Bible. I will worship with the saints. I will encourage people. But they don't really care about their prayer life at all. I'm just not going to talk to God, but maybe when I show up at services. Or I'm going to do all of that. I'm just not going to care to study my Bible at all. You wouldn't show up to your wedding with such a glaring problem like this. So also, why would you want to be a Christian, putting in all the effort, but not go the extra mile? Not take that last step? It doesn't make sense. To which then in verse 5, they fell asleep unprepared. Now, while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep. Is there anything wrong with them falling asleep? No, there is nothing wrong. But how many of you have known that you, 1, have to sleep, and 2, you have to get something done before tomorrow? And rather than saying, I'm going to get that something done before tomorrow and then sleep, you decide, nah, I'm just going to fall asleep and then I'll wake up early and here's hoping. Then you wake up early and it kind of ruins your morning because you have to rush, you have to focus, you didn't put in as quality work. That's what's happening here. They didn't earn their rest. They didn't earn their sleep. There are going to be times in your life that you are going to set up maybe a vacation for your family. There's going to be times where you're going to just need to sleep. There's going to be times where you're going to put in a bunch of money and time and resources to just have fun. And that, in and of itself, is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you haven't given God his time, dedicated to God what he deserves, but then you're going to focus on you yourself and the rest that you want to do, taking away the focus from God when you haven't even fully given him the focus, that's a scary situation to be in. And so because of that, they were taken off guard at the coming of the groom. Verse 6. But at midnight there was a shout, "Behold, the bridegroom, come out to meet him." You don't know when, truly, the Son of Man is going to come back. You may have 2 minutes from now. You may not know when you're going to pass on. Some people are given the gift of being able to foresee it for a little while. Other people that I know of didn't have that chance. And it's just gone. You don't know how much time you have to prepare. You might be taken off guard. Like I said, you may have 2 more minutes. And so this right here is a mid-sermon invitation. If you need to stop me, If you need to stop me in my sermon, come sit up the front row and we can baptize you. Let's do that. Because you don't know how much time you've got left. And you don't want to be taken off guard if you're not prepared. To which then, did I turn it off? Could we move on to the next slide? There we go. They had everything but oil. We pretty much already looked at this, but verses 7 and 8, Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." Once they were hit unprepared, they realized what they had done, and they didn't have their oil. They weren't able to continue on. And what does that lead to? They lost their chance. Verses 9 through 12. But the prudent answered, "No, there will not be enough for us and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later the other virgins also came, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up for us." But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you." Think about that. We hear this in a lot of parables, but very rarely is it this personal. This is a groom talking to his soon-to-be bride, saying, "I do not know you." Many times it's a slave talking to a master. This is a bride looking at her groom. And here's the deal. Even if it was a fixed marriage, you would have known the man. It wouldn't have just been a surprise, like, I don't know who this person is. I've never seen him before, never met him. Typically, you would have known the individual. You look at this man that you know you're building a relationship with, and he says, "I don't know you." Jesus is trying to make a big impact here. You had a relationship. You were growing a relationship. It was deep. It was personal. But you chose to not take it seriously. I chose to not take it seriously. And so because of that, I can lose my chance. If there's one thing we need to remember from the perspective of the foolish, it is this phrase right here. If you aren't fully prepared for your last day, then it is a scary thing to not know when that day will be. We were talking about this in our class, at least, talking about the last day, thinking about the last day. And here's the deal. If I am not prepared, then it's a scary thing to be in the dark. It's a scary thing to not know when it's going to come. I don't want anyone in this room to be scared for that last day. Be prepared. So because of that, let's briefly look at the perspective of the prudent, or the fully prepared. It's a better way to say it. In modern language, that is. The fully prepared. They took the oil with them, looking back at verse 4 again, but the prudent took oil in flasks along with their lamps. They were ready. They were prepared. They not only got their dress, they not only had their wedding party, they not only had the venue, they had the oil ready to go. They were prepared. So what did that lead to? They fell asleep confidently. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with taking time for you, for your family, for just even to sleep. There's nothing wrong with that, especially if you're prepared for it. Verse 5 again says, "Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep." Hey, if you as a bride don't have the nerves to keep you awake, if you're like, okay, I'm just tired, I want to go to sleep, and if you're fully prepared, hey, you're allowed to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. You are allowed to take those moments of rest and not focusing on the impending coming of the bridegroom. You don't have to always have that if in your waking hours you're preparing for it. If in your time you are making sure you're ready to go. And it's okay. You can fall asleep confidently. Verse 6, they were taken off guard at the coming of the groom. Doesn't this sound exactly? This is the exact same phrase that we used in the last point. They were taken off guard at the coming of the groom. Verse 6, but at midnight there was a shout. Behold, the bridegroom, come out to meet him. Hey, it doesn't matter if you're prepared, you're going to be taken off guard too. Doesn't matter if you pass on today. You're going to be taken off guard. Doesn't matter if Jesus Christ comes today and you're prepared. You're going to be taken off guard, but that's not an issue anymore, is it? You don't have to worry about it. If you pass on today, we will be sad. You won't. That's what's happening here. You won't be sad. We will. We'll miss you. But you don't have to worry about that. Because it doesn't matter if you're taken off guard, if you're prepared, if you're ready. They had everything they needed in verses 7 through 9. Then all those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the prudent answered, no, there will not be enough for us. And you too, go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourselves. They were ready. I mean, I'm just reiterating what we're saying here, but they were ready. Maybe not enough. Maybe not ready enough for to supply the oil for the other women, but they were ready. They were good to go. They had prepared. And so even though they were taken off guard, even though they fell asleep, it didn't matter. They woke up, probably fixed their hair, trimmed their oil. They're like, all right, I'm ready to meet my groom. And because of that, this is the massively different end. If we put ourselves in the perspective of the people who are prudent, who are fully prepared, they entered into the wedding feast. When before, it was they missed their chance. Now, we see, it says verses 10 through 13. Let's just look at verses 10 and 13. Verse 10 says, and while they were going away to make the purchase, the others, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. They were ready, and they joined. And this, at the end of this parable, Jesus says, be on the alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour. Be on the alert. Be ready. What does this phrase, be on the alert, mean? It means I need to be so prepared that I can unconsciously be ready for his return. We want to think and prepare for his return. We need to do that. We need to do that more often than probably we do. At least I know I do. I need to think about his return more often. But if I am so prepared, this be on the alert does not mean I always have to think about it and I need to wake myself up every 2 hours and go, okay, think about it. That's not what it's talking about here. It's about being prepared. It's about being ready. While I'm on my day, while I am working, I am preparing for my end and the end of others. And while I'm taking my rest, I'm ready for it. I'm prepared. I don't have to worry about it because I know Jesus Christ has saved me and I have a relationship with him. Are you prepared? Are you confident? If so, awesome. If not, now's your chance to come forward. Do you need help from us? Typically, I would say, do you need prayers from us? And we would definitely give you prayers because that is the greatest thing that we as Christians could do. But maybe there's something that you are lacking in your relationship with Jesus Christ, and you want some time where maybe the elders could pull you aside. we could sit down in this office over here somewhere and write out a plan for you. Because maybe you're lacking in your prayer life and you want help with a plan to get more invested in your prayer life. We want to help you with that, whether you come forward or whether you come talk to me afterwards. I want to help you with that because we all need to be prepared and confident. And if you've not been added to the Lord's church through the waters of baptism yet, you may not have another chance. I don't know. Please utilize this opportunity. Please come forward as we stand and sing.
Amen.